Because I didn't prepare much, and I'll, let the man speak for himself. My name is Sean Polson. I'm the president of the Secular Students and Skeptics Society, the organization here on campus putting on this event. I want to thank everybody who's not a part of us who came out here today to see this talk for us. I recognize so few people in this crowd. We've got a great number of people here, and it's sure to be an interesting talk. Like I said, I don't want to hog the stage, so I'm just going to turn it over to Lucien. Thank you all for waiting, and thank you for coming.
Last Friday, the Daily Beast reached out to me. That was 4 days before the presidential election, in regards to InfoWars and Sean Hannity running with a WikiLeaks story about Clinton campaign emails that discussed her campaign manager John Podesta's brother's email with one Marina Abramovic, a performance artist, who invited him to invite his brother John Podesta to a spirit cooking dinner. Podesta's brother forwarded the email to Podesta, and all it said was, "I am looking so forward to the spirit cooking dinner at my place. Do you think you'll be able to let me know if your brother is joining? All my love, Marina." And this became conflated into this story of cannibalism and ritual murder, sacrifice, and how spirit cooking, due to some of the performance art that this Abramovic lady had done, was necessarily some kind of satanic rite. And I was asked for my opinion on that, and immediately what came to mind were stories of witches' Sabbath, stories of old about witches collecting in covens and making stews with human bones, eating children, and engaging in all kinds of cannibalistic orgies and that type of thing. And unless one think that this means that there's a long-held tradition of satanic ritual sacrifice and infant murder, one should also keep in mind that these kinds of stories have been circulated about every religious outgroup. Jews, the blood libel against Jews, had said that they used babies to make their matzo balls with a lot of Christian infant blood. Christians, when they were the minority in ancient Rome, were accused of the same. So what you really find is not really a common thread in a ritualistic practice or some kind of occult society that's been operating since ancient times, but there's a commonality in the way we make outgroups. We have a limited menu of the most disgusting things that people can be engaged in, the most heinous crimes that people can be accused of. And I did a previous lecture one time where I asked people to write down the top 5. And they were all very similar except for some comical abnormalities. But they usually involve incest, cannibalism, and other homicidal activities being hidden. So what I said to the Daily Beast was, obviously what's really going on here is that the real would-be magicians are attempting desperately to conjure scandal from lackluster, mundane emails which were previously hoped to contain some political, career-ruining revelations. The absurdity of the accusations regarding the disgust-inducing ingredients harken back to witch hunter inquisitorial panic fantasies that one would hope that we'd grown beyond today. That was all they published of what I said, but my real statement was much longer and included, it said, for every superstitious moral panic, there were also credulous occultists and researchers who took the claim seriously, and some who maybe even tried to replicate the practice. However, I think that what's really happening here, in the case of the Clinton spirit dinner, is that the term had no occult meaning and didn't even imply it. I think that the superstitious evangelical mindless mob that exercises a degree of cognitive dissonance, which allows them to line up after the pussy grabber in the name of family values, find the idea of Hillary Clinton being a secret sorceress less horrifying than the truth. That magic doesn't exist, there's no invisible man directing our vote, and our problems can't be prayed away. Trump, I believe, is exactly the candidate he appears to be, and this ludicrous conspiracy theory is a product of the difficulty with which his supporters are trying to reconcile who he is with what they believe themselves to stand for. If they can't delude themselves into believing they are voting for a man of God, they can at least convince themselves they're voting against Satan. It's easier to believe that Hillary is an agent of occult supernatural evil than to believe that Trump is a credible presidential caliber. Nonetheless, he's who we're stuck with. But this says quite a few things about the idea of Satanism in general. This idea that they are the arbiters of what is morally correct, and therefore the opposition to any of their claims of moral superiority are necessarily the product of a conspiracy of evil. And that's where the legends of the mythology of Satanism has been generated from heretics explained away as this kind of conspiracy of evil having satanic allegiances. So that's the conspiracist narrative, the one that says that if you're against the established religious institutions, that you are also against the moral good, and that you are somehow trying to undermine the moral fabric of society. And it buffers people from actually having to consider whether their claims are moral at all, and whether they are on the right side of history. While we don't believe in a Jehovah, and we don't hold to any supernatural beliefs, we feel that this kind of religious narrative that utilizes these characters of Jehovah and Satan speak to the kind of attitudes and ideas that form these mythologies. The collective of Jehovah's followers can then be kind of a reflection of what we make of this metaphor of Jehovah himself. And you can see that this kind of petty, petulant behavior that we see in the Bible displayed by Jehovah is actually quite endorsed by some of his most zealous followers. In fact, there's a great book online that I'd recommend. It's called God Loves Everyone, the Greatest Lie Ever Told. 701 passages proving God's hate and wrath for most of mankind. And it goes on and explains, if God truly loved everyone, then everyone in the Bible would be loved and admired by God. If this was true, you should be able to open the Bible anywhere from Genesis to Revelation and find everyone in the Bible going to heaven and receiving nothing but loving attention from God. Of course, nothing could be further from the truth. By chapter 3 of Genesis, the lie is undone. When Satan is described, the lie is undone when Satan is described, Certainly mankind can agree that all creatures, Satan is destined for hell. By Genesis chapter 4, Cain slays righteous Abel. In Genesis chapter 6, God sees that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination and thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord, and he made the earth, and it grieved him in his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man. Houston, we have a problem. God then destroys the whole earth, whoops, and everyone on it, except for Noah and his small family, by a flood, which means many of them die a slow, agonizing death after days or even weeks of terror. Not only adults died, infants, elderly, men, women, children, newborns, because everyone perished, and so it goes. You can't even get out of the first book without the wrath and judgments of God consuming most of the book. So it is throughout the Bible. Open it anywhere and you'll see the wrath and judgment of God in every book and nearly every chapter of the Bible. Below is a list of human beings in the Bible that God took exception to, judged, or summarily executed. And from there it gives the passages and recites the stories of God's brutality and petty behavior. This book, actually, available for free online, as I said, is available at the website godhatesfags.com. It's put out by the Westboro Baptist Church. Now, say what you will about them, but I think it's correct theology, and I agree with their interpretation of the Bible, if nothing else. I also agree with their stance on free speech. I think as odious as they are, I'm happy we live in a country where they can protest the way they do. In fact, I've exercised similar towards them, and not too long ago I was outside the Westboro Baptist Church, and we were playing music very loudly, and we had transsexual people there, and we were beckoning them to come out and dance with us, but they didn't reply. And in fact, they're quite annoyed by my behavior overall. They honored me by tweeting, "Nasty grave molester Lucien Greaves stalks Westboro Baptist Church. Go away, weirdo. Repent of your filthy deeds." So it hurt their feelings to be met on their own terms at their own place. But as for the grave molester, I need to fess up on that one. Fred Phelps' mother was buried at this cemetery, and after the Boston bombing, when they said they were going to come and protest the funerals, we decided that we would do a kind of ritualistic event at her grave that was homoerotic, and ultimately it culminated in me resting my scrotum respectfully on her grave and declaring her a lesbian in the afterlife. We were clear, however, still that we don't believe in the supernatural, but we took to heart their arguments that their belief is inviolable. So we decided that we believe that they were obligated to believe that Fred Phelps' mother was a lesbian in the afterlife, and regardless of what they would say, we chose to believe that they continue to believe that. So surely after that, people will say, you're just a joke, and or you're just targeting Christian institutions or radicals like the Westboro Baptist Church. And to be clear, I don't actually think the Westboro Baptist Church is as radical as they are more honest than characters like Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson. Those guys, every so often, even when the Twin Towers were struck in 9/11, Jerry Falwell was saying that this was caused by gays and secularists, and that this was God's wrath. And Pat Robertson will look back wistfully on the days when we used to stone homosexuals and that kind of thing. And he says stupid things every day. He's got a channel on 700 Club. But every so often, somebody in the press listens to it and calls them out on it, and they'll apologize and say that they don't hate the sinner, they hate the sin, and that kind of thing. But it's all bullshit. We do have our own affirmative values, actually, and we put those forward, and we actually really aren't about attacking anybody else's belief, but it's the imposition of that belief upon other people that we reject, and particularly those who strive towards theocracy. Our tenets state one should strive to act with compassion and empathy towards all creatures in accordance with reason. The struggle for justice is an ongoing and necessary pursuit that should prevail.
runs in schools in about 9 cities. Take a look. They've got the mascot here. There he is. I think that's a little graduation cap. He's got the candy cane work. And then the Satanic Temple said, okay, we're not here to teach about the red guy and the pitchfork. It's about scientific rationalization, free thinking. But then you go on YouTube and you check out their video, and I'm going to let you listen to a little bit of it. It's going to send a little bit of a chill down your spine. You get the red lettering in there, and it goes in deeper. You get the voices and the more foreboding music. So we've got a representative from the group. We'll ask about the video here. The question, though, is in all of this is, and especially in some of these cities where it's being targeted, what are parents saying about it? Here's how they're reacting.
It's America. I mean, you know, freedom of speech.
My preference would be no, that we don't have it. But their preference would be that Christians might have their group too.
All right, and after school Satan targeting possible locations. There you see it in 9 cities. Atlanta, that's where you heard the parents from the Atlanta area, Los Angeles, Seattle, Springfield, so kind of across the country there. And joining me to talk a little further about this via Skype's co-founder, spokesperson for the Satanic Temple, Lucien Greaves is with us, and by phone,
Sure.
the vice president for USA Ministries, the Child Evangelism Fellowship. They have the Good News Club, it's a Christian after-school program. Moses Esteves joins us as well. Lucien, let me start with you. First off, clear up what you're teaching, because on one side it's about critical thinking, but then I saw that video that's got more of a Lucifer leaning to it. What are you teaching?
Well, we don't contain any items of religious opinion in our curriculum, in contrast to the Child Evangelism Fellowship and the Good News Clubs, which train children to proselytize to other children in public schools. We were hoping, actually, the video would be jarring and cause people to think about the lack of regulation and restriction on after-school club curriculum and the kind of materials that are being put forward in the schools. Because I think if most Christians knew what the Child Evangelism Fellowship was about and how they have an acrimonious relationship to many sects of Christianity, including the Catholic Church, they would be disgusted to know that they're coming in and training children, trying to coerce them into their way of fundamentalist, isolationist thinking.
Okay, well, I'll ask Moses about that in just a sec, but while we're on what you guys are teaching, again, if you continue on with the video, you've got the foreboding voices and things like that. Clear it up. Is it about free thinking, or are you talking about Satan in there to kids?
Well, I'm not sure where you're getting Satan in the video, other than that you see the imagery as being foreboding. It might be foreboding, but I don't think there's anything actually objectionable in any of it.
Okay, so again, teaching about Satan or not?
No, not teaching about Satan. It's
a
after-school club that's incidentally held by the Satanic Temple and executed by Satanists.
Got it. Okay. Moses Esteves is here. Esteves, sorry. So what is taught in the Good News Club after school?
Well, thank you for having me. The Good News Club is a nurturing, welcoming, privately sponsored after-school enrichment club, offering training in morals, character, leadership, citizenship, but from a Christian biblical perspective. We do a variety of fun activities with Bible stories, songs, and games, and we teach the children about God, that God loves them, that Christ loves them, and the children respond in wonderful ways to the message of the gospel, and their lives are impacted very positively. As a matter of fact, their behavior starts changing for the better. We have principals that have said, and I just even recently read a quote, we have noticed an improvement in student behavior. Good News Club has provided us with an extra resource for our high-risk population. Another one said, since the Good News Club has been a part of our school, the office referrals have decreased. So we teach children to respect one another, respect their parents, respect their teachers from a Christian biblical base. And the community loves the clubs, and I think their enrollment demonstrates that too. Currently, we have 178,000 children coming to this club, and they come because they love it. They are loved by their teachers, and it's a very positive experience for the school and the community. Okay, there's both sides of this, but you, Lucien, you see that this group is indoctrinating kids, right? And you want to come
Not only that, they're not teaching the love of Jesus and the love of God. If you actually look at their material, they're specifically telling kids that they're sinners and that they will go to hell and that the ultimate outcome of the sin is death. And that's that's a primary reason why we think a counterbalance of having Satanists representing an after-school club and showing that people can be of a differing religious opinion or even embrace what looks like blasphemous imagery and still be moral and productive people, we think that sends a very positive message to children. Because the idea of Satanists as this kind of outgroup for which we justify witch hunts and outgroup purges has never been very constructive.
Well, on that point, and there was a tweet, a person named Maddie tweeted out this, but why didn't you just call it a science club and get the term Satan out of there if you want more of a critical free thinking?
Well, because we do have this history of outgroup making, and we have a history of burning witches that never existed or imprisoning Satanists that never were active. And this has happened as recently as the 80s and 90s in the United States, false accusations of satanic crimes. So we're not eager to uphold this idea of Satan's servants on earth and that people who disagree with a Christian perspective must necessarily uphold cruelty and destruction. And we think that kids should know that there's different meaning to different symbols for different people, and that it doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong.
Hey, Moses, I'll let you wrap it up here concerning Lucian's contention that a lot of what is taught in the Good News is about, the wages of sin is death and that so forth. Is that a bulk of what is taught?
Well, Child Evangelism Fellowship has been teaching for 79 years what the Bible has been teaching for 2,000 years, and that Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. And this issue of the content of our clubs was thoroughly discussed before the justices of the Supreme Court in early 2001, and on June 11, 2001, on a vote 6-3, the United States Supreme Court ruled that Good News Clubs can be on a school campus and have equal treatment. The parents of the clubs are invited to come to the clubs. Many of them come, sit in the back of the room. They love the club. They love the content of the club. This is all negative publicity from this group of atheists. The people behind the after-school Satan clubs are atheists dressed up in scary costumes. This isn't a Satanist club. This isn't a devil-worshipping club. These are atheists trying to scare parents with pitchfork and devil horns. And so the bottom line is the parents, just like they sign permission slips for the kids to come to Good News Clubs, they're going to have to sign parental permission slips to come to these clubs. And just like an atheist club that completely flopped in New York last year because the parents wouldn't send their kids, the parents are not going to send their kids to these clubs. All
right, well, both you guys had your say, and we've just run out of time there. So there's both sides of it. We'll see if any after-school Satan programs pop up in some of these 9 cities. Lucien, Moses, thank you guys for your time. All right, now we're about to take you inside.
So that was a big question. Will anybody actually sign up for this? And I think it's a testament to the frustration felt by a good number of parents and people in their communities that we have seen a flood of support. We've gotten endless emails from people wanting to start after-school Satan clubs and use our curriculum where Good News clubs are. And I don't feel that it's because these people are particularly eager to identify as Satanists, but they see this as a great credible counterbalance to something they've been screaming about for a very, very long time, but nobody's really recognized. And I'm proud of the fact that we've kept the media on point to the degree that most times this is spoken about in the press. And when I was on this, the question was posed after school Satan Club as opposed to the Good News Club. So it's very clear why we're there, and people seem to understand that. But next week is our first session in Portland, and media is very interested in that, so I'm sure you'll be hearing more about it, so keep looking. We've gone into schools before. In Florida, there was a school district that was allowing for the passive distribution of evangelical biblical materials, meaning that they had set up the lunchroom on a certain day as an open forum for religious propaganda that the kids could take and have fun with or whatever. And these included Bibles and pamphlets about Jesus in whatever church. And it was the Freedom from Religion Foundation that reached out to us and asked if we had any materials with which to test the idea of this open forum. And when I spoke to this representative from the Freedom from Religion Foundation, he was saying we could be critical of Christian religious belief, but I told him that that wasn't really our game, that we did have our own affirmative values and we really don't proselytize, and that it's enough for us to just put something out as the Satanic Temple, and it turns out it's enough for the school districts too. They flew into a complete panic. There was nothing but pro-social messages in there, and nothing objectionable at all, much to their dismay, I'm sure, because when the original panic struck, when we said that we wanted to distribute materials in their open forum, the school district went to the press and said that they reserved the ultimate right to either approve or deny our materials. And we knew that that was true only up to a certain point. If we didn't put anything that violated some pre-existing community standards, if it wasn't by any stretch of the imagination vulgar or otherwise objectionable in that way, that there was no way they could really turn us down. And they got this, and you could see at their school board meeting, their lawyer was just rather frustrated and exasperated, and he said, "There's really, you guys can't really turn them down." And so they shut down the open forum entirely, rather than deal with the horrors of having this activity book given to children. We also offer religious exemption against corporal punishment. There's still 19 states that allow school administrators to beat children, and they're given a legal pass. Their parents, if they beat them in a similar manner in some of these cases, would be charged with a felony. They can beat them black and blue and not be charged with a crime. And we cite our tenet that the body is inviolable subject to one's own will alone to state that we find that against our religion, and if the exemption isn't respected, then we will litigate the school district on religious liberty grounds. We also offer religious reproductive rights exemptions, and while we haven't been able to test the corporal punishment case in the courts, because you need standing, you can't just come up with an idea like this and then bring it to court and say we have a right for this to be recognized. We would actually need a kid to fill out the exemption form, turn it into the school district, and then be subjected to corporal punishment during that school year, and then be able to bring it to court. With the reproductive rights cases, we fight for abortion access, saying that, again, citing that body is inviolable subject to one's own will alone, and that we should conform our beliefs to our best scientific understanding, to state that we don't believe that fetal tissue constitutes an individual, distinct, unique human life, and that it is up to the woman whether she wants to keep the fetal tissue or not. And in Missouri, we had standing for a case there when a member of the Satanic Temple wanted to terminate her pregnancy, and they have a 72-hour waiting period that's justified by these informed consent materials. What happens is you're supposed to go into, if you want to terminate your pregnancy, you're supposed to go into the clinic, and there's only one clinic that does it in Missouri, so this could be a very long trip for you. You have to go in and get these state-mandated informed consent materials. And the informed consent materials state that if you get an abortion performed on you, that you are terminating a unique individual human life and essentially accusing you of murder to kind of instill guilt and shame on you for coming to this decision. And it requires that you take these materials, these state-mandated informed consent materials, and then wait 72 hours before coming to the clinic to have the procedure done. So if you're doing that kind of traveling, the cost might be prohibitive. The travel might not allow you to make those 2 trips. And that's exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to prevent people from being able to have access to their reproductive rights. We were saying that since these are items of religious opinion, this idea of the fetal tissue being elevated to this human status, since it's a religious opinion, we don't hold that it is a violation of our free exercise that they impose it upon us. And Hobby Lobby actually helped on this. While we think we have the scientific high ground on this, or at least if you can't elevate the informed consent material propositions to scientific absolutes, then I think it would work in our favor that we could say one way or the other. But with Hobby Lobby, what happened was they allowed a corporation claiming, and who knows on what scriptural basis, that they didn't have to pay benefits to healthcare that would provide contraceptions. Hobby Lobby was able to say that they viewed certain prophylactics as abortifacients when in fact they were not. And the Supreme Court actually ruled that this was a matter of religious opinion for them. It didn't matter scientifically if these were abortifacients or not. So we felt that it probably made it a lot easier for us, because why then should we have to bring in expert witnesses to say that this is an unscientific point of view being put forward by the informed consent materials? So this was MSNBC talking about the issue when it first came to light.
Is the Supreme Court willing to give Satan the same protections it's given to a god? It's a question the Satanic Temple is demanding an answer to as part of an ingenious trolling response to the court's very controversial, very real Hobby Lobby ruling. In that case, you might remember the court found that under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, the craft chain Hobby Lobby does not have to comply with the part of the Affordable Care Act that mandates employer-sponsored insurance plans cover a full range of contraceptives with no patient copay. The reasoning was that RFRA, that law, gives privately held corporations the ability to opt out of laws that violate the owner's sincerely held religious beliefs. Okay, so along comes the Satanic Temple. The same people who are trying to install this goat-headed satanic statue outside the Oklahoma State House. Given the court's ruling in favor of Hobby Lobby, Satanic Temple has some sincerely held religious beliefs of its own they want to see honored. The Satanists believe that, quote, the body is inviolable, subject to one's own will alone. And they say they strive to make all decisions regarding personal health based on the best scientific understanding of the world, regardless of the religious or political beliefs of others. You will find violations of those sincerely held beliefs, the Satanists say, in many of the 35 states with so-called informed consent laws on the books. These are laws requiring women seeking an abortion to be given or offered information about abortion that is often medically disputed or downright disproved by an overwhelming majority of scientific research. The Satanists have helpfully provided an opt-out form letter on their website, which women seeking abortion are encouraged to print and take with them to their doctor. If and when a doctor fails to recognize the Satanic Temple's opt-out letter as valid, that is when the Satanists say they will file a lawsuit. So, is this a really well-played joke, or could we actually see the Satanist bodily autonomy case before the court? MSNBC.com national reporter Irene Carmona has been reporting on that very question, and she joins me now. All right, so is there something to this? I mean, obviously, no lawsuit's been filed yet, right? So you got to find the plaintiff who has the injury, who goes and tries to do this, and they're rejected. Then they file a lawsuit. But could you actually, would this have legs?
Well, it is an act of epic trolling that is brilliant, right? Because one of the things the Supreme Court said in its Hobby Lobby decision is we can't question people's religious beliefs. If they say it violates their religious beliefs, so be it. Whether it's scientific, whether it's documented, that doesn't matter. So once you open up that door, you open up the door to all kinds of religious claims.
Right. Although one thing that we should note, right, the Hobby Lobby decision stipulates and is never contested that the belief held by Hobby Lobby is sincere. Right. Sincerity actually is part of the test, right?
That's true, but the courts have been very reluctant to get into the sincerity question.
For obvious reasons,
yeah,
right? Who's going to say?
How are you going to check? I mean, it would only be if for example, in the Eden Foods case, if somebody cites anti-government views, then that's not a religion. Right. But in most cases, if you say it's my religion, then that's okay. The thing is, in prisoner cases, they sometimes question the sincerity. Right. But you know, if the court has said that there are these kinds of religious exemptions, then why not here? Now, they probably, if they really are going to file a lawsuit, they need to look for a federal law, because the Supreme Court has previously found that RFRA, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, doesn't apply to state laws. Right. So there is a perfect federal law that they can go for. That's the Hyde Amendment, which bans federal funding of abortion and impacts low-income women every year. Unless their state allows their state Medicaid funds to cover abortion, these women are out of luck. The Supreme Court heard a free exercise claim in 1980. They said this violates the religious rights of the women seeking abortions, the Hyde Amendment. They didn't listen to it. But that was before we had RFRA. That was before we had Hobby Lobby.
Wait, so this has been contested before the court before. They didn't actually take the case, or they didn't agree with the plaintiffs that they violated?
They took the case. It was one of several claims. This is Harris versus McRae in 1980. And they said, basically, that they're not even going to consider the free exercise claim. There were other claims that they considered because the women hadn't shown that it violated their religious beliefs. But if you had a woman, let's say she was a Reform Jew, let's say she was a Unitarian Universalist, she says that her religious freedom, her religious beliefs dictate that she plan her family, that she chart her destiny, and that the state is putting impermissible burdens in the way of that, that it is that she should be exempted from that law. Well, why would the court say it's okay for Hobby Lobby to be exempted from that law and not that woman?
What this gets to is a suspicion of many onlookers that some of the people on the court actually don't have a kind of value-neutral view of religion. Scalia, for instance, writes the opinion in the original case that gets all this started saying, no, you can't smoke peyote religiously if peyote is illegal. And in oral arguments, he says, what next? And Aztecs talk about human sacrifice. We can't just let all these people. But of course, that's not Christianity, right? And what the sort of satanic example gets to here is like, are you guys really serious about all religions being on a level playing field, or are you not?
And of course, if they're not serious, then that's a violation of the Establishment Clause.
MSNBC.com national reporter Irene Carmon, thank you. Thanks. All right, you ever feel like...
So those work to our advantage in these kinds of cases where we can leverage RFRA in those states for the reproductive rights cases. And also, we did file in federal court as a straight First Amendment claim saying that it was a violation of free exercise. So we have those two cases pending in court now. Something we've noticed in the way of public education when we put forward our rights to be in the open forums, the open religious forums, is that people don't really understand at all that when you do open the forum in public places to religious voices, that it's not an endorsement of the specific religion. And we really notice that when we opt to open city council meetings where they allow a prayer at the beginning and then we offer to open with the satanic invocation. They often have these public hearings beforehand where they let the public speak. And you'll see that the public thinks that the city council has invited Satanists to come and there again ruin the spiritual purity of the entire city and bring apocalypse upon the whole nation if they allow this to happen. But it shows what they think about the religious privilege of the Christians that are always opening with the prayer. There's always this talk within the courts when they do uphold right for these things to be done, that people can make that kind of separation, that people know the distinction between what's sanctioned by the state or the city or the government and what is not. And we found more and more that just isn't true. And very disturbing, you see that people see In God We Trust on money and on city hall walls and on plaques in public spaces. And they think that gives them a license, it gives them a certain privilege over other religious belief systems that really is unconstitutional and isn't there. And these are just some clips from the city council hearing in Phoenix, Arizona, where our chapter offered to give an invocation and all apocalypse broke loose.
There is a Constitution greater than the American Constitution, and it is substantiated or sustained by God Himself.
I'm going to read the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Satanism is not a religion, it's a cult.
I think their goal is to silence prayer as opposed to doing invocations.
Their goal is to silence any kind of prayer whatsoever.
We take a pledge of allegiance. It's one nation under God. That's not out there by mistake.
How many people actually have a dollar bill or a piece of money in their wallet or their pocket? I do believe it says, "In God we trust." And I've got people that are ready to demonstrate if you don't stand up for God.
And right now, our domestic enemies seem to be pretty great.
They are a hate group, and specifically, they are a misogynist group. You will see images of Michelle Short in bondage, in nudity, in all kinds of positions that are not appropriate. A hate group who promotes violence against women. Their main goal is to silence any expression, any religious expression in public life.
I do agree with you that it is a cult. It's not a real religion. It just isn't. Their main goal, and I want to drive this home, is to silence the other side.
It could considered to be by a woman like me to be terrorism.
We can't allow the members of the city council and mayor to pick and choose who they want to give the invocation and only invite those people. It has to be open.
And this country was founded on the principles of Judeo-Christian principles. We are not going to practice our religion behind our closed doors and behind the churches. We're going to practice it right here at City Council.
Don't sell your soul on this.
Our nation was founded on Judeo-Christian values and prayers. If we abandon him, he will abandon us.
You will answer to God. I represent Jesus Christ.
And when I hear all these people talking and they say, under God, well, which God are you talking about? I heard that gentleman just say, Jesus Christ. So if you're a Jew, is it not your God? Or is it a Muslim, or are we just going with the religions of Abraham? Either you have everybody or you have nobody.
It saddens me to hear what's going on. I'm a Christian. I believe in the one true God. I want Christians to pray. I want those that believe in God, the one true God, to pray, and it will bring blessings to everyone.
We're one nation under God, believe it or not, like it or not.
I believe a Satan worshiper would just bring curses.
I recommend the elimination of the invocation from the agenda.
The motto for our nation is, in God we trust.
You seem to think that this prayer thing is all about you guys. But you work for us. You represent us. You aren't individuals who can say, this prayer is good, that prayer is bad.
But I myself served in a country called Iraq. It's none of my business how you vote if you don't want to tell me, and how you pray, because I don't need a middleman between me and my God. I don't need a high priest.
Christianity is becoming irrelevant, and being politically correct is becoming relevant.
We want to lift up the name of Jesus. There is no other name in heaven and earth whereby a man must be saved than the name of Jesus Christ. Let's get that straight. Make no mistake about it. Jesus is the way.
I'm a proud atheist, and I am here to ask you, as government officials, to honor the minority in this community.
This is a spiritual thing. This is in the spiritual realm. This is evil against good. And the devil is out, Satan is out to win. And we don't want to give him Phoenix. Many years ago, more than 200 years ago, our government had a good idea in the First Amendment to keep separate religion and government. Also in Article 6, Paragraph 3, they said that elected representatives are bound by an oath to the Constitution, not to the Bible.
Now, because I don't bow to an Abrahamic God, does that make me subject to a tweet that says that I'm too stupid to be represented by this council? I'm done.
Matthew 6:6 specifically states, "But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you." What we need to be doing is trying to put inclusion into government.
I have personal knowledge of what Satanists do. Now, this was a long time ago.
I know the city of Phoenix is making a bad decision by inviting Satanists for a prayer.
As for the Satanist prayer coming the 18th, I don't believe that the city has a choice but to allow it to happen.
It is the goal of Satan to silence and muzzle people's voices. Our goal is not to shut down the Satanists, but it's our goal to shut down their agenda, which is to bring death and destruction over Phoenix.
I'm with those that hold that everyone here is entitled to believe whatever they choose to believe. What they're not entitled to do is to impose each of their beliefs on all the rest of us. I challenge anyone here to open their Bible and find the word democracy or republic in it. It isn't there. We do not live in a Judeo-Christian culture.
So are we invoking still the blessings of God on our state and our city? Are we invoking the curses of the deity spoken of that they serve as Satan?
When I took my oath of citizenship, it was under God.
I am a child of God. I am a child of God.
I would not let El Chapo play marbles with my children.
O Jack el Destripador.
Or Jack the
Dios me los bendiga.
God bless.
The government has no business in establishing a religion, but they have no business in regulating it either.
I want you to know that there are things worse than lawsuits for you to consider. Can't imagine having a Satanist church come here and invoke the powers of darkness over the city of Phoenix, when most of us pray every day to keep him away from us, to keep him out of our lives.
A member of this committee asks that anyone who approves of the upcoming invocation of the Satanic Temple should put their name in the record. I, Jocelyn Nicole Nickel, proudly stand with Thomas Jefferson and sign my name to protecting and defending the Constitution of the United States of America.
Gentlemen, can I ask you to at least keep it to a low volume?
No, he's going to pronounce curses on us and you.
Then I'm going to ask you all to leave so that we can get to the
We're not leaving. No,
Mr.
President,
may I be allowed to speak? We're not leaving the chambers if I like. I don't want to have to do that.
Throw us all out.
Mr. President, may I be allowed to speak for 1 second? No, sir. This is the invocation.
This is a curse being placed on the city council and the city and the Escambia County and our neighbors and our friends and family.
Mr. President, you allowed him last week to stand on the floor and say, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama. We need to have the chambers cleared.
We're not
We allowed him last time.
I need everybody to exit the chambers.
Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread.
All right, everybody, we gotta
Remember this, this is not a constitutional right. This is not a constitutional right. It's not.
What's going on, Tom?
I'm not running.
Is he leaving?
No, I'm not running.
He's not leaving.
We're doing a lawful order of police. Okay? We're going to come back.
Okay.
Please exit. Yes, ma'am. Understand?
I'm not. Christ didn't when they came to the garden and gave him, he said, you're on.
He prays to Isis.
I arcane doctrine, born of fearful lies, in darkened times.
Mr. Wingate,
Let us be grateful for Luciferian to eat of the tree of knowledge, and dissipate our blissful and comforting illusion of hope.
You don't even know how to sing.
Let us demand that individuals be judged for their concrete action.
One thing about it, this is the only
Not
time.
their field
Enjoy it.
to arbitrary social norms and illusory categorization.
What a joke.
Okay, so now you're happy because you got the Ten Commandments taken down, but are you still pushing to have the goat with the horns and so on put up on the state capitol grounds?
No, we don't want our monument there without the Ten Commandments there. The point all along was that it would complement and contrast the Ten Commandments and reaffirm that we live in a pluralistic nation that respects diversity and religious liberty.
First of all, we say that being a homosexual is a constitutional right. Before that, we said that slaughtering unborn babies was a constitutional right. And now we want to unveil a statue of Satan in the midst of that economically plagued city. Can you believe that? Where are we headed?
It's evil. Not a good role model. So they should be able to put the statue up, and then they should be shot right next to it, and then we take it down.
Evil will not destroy us. It will pervert us.
Isn't this what is going to bring the judgment of God upon us?
But the thing with the horns and so on, the Ten Commandments goes up because not only does it have some religious meaning, but it has historical meaning too. I mean, would you acknowledge that about the Ten Commandments?
Well, I would, yes, if you would acknowledge that Baphomet has historical meaning as well.
The Baphomet is the goat with the,
The image at least goes back to the 19th century. It's at least as old as Mormonism in the case.
In the end, we will beg the Lord above to destroy us. We will beg for destruction.
You say, could we possibly be serving idols? Could we be sacrificing our babies to some heathen god? Is there something that we're going to be having ritual sacrifice on the State House lawn of some state?
Are we making a mockery of everything with regard to Christianity in this society? Now we're going to have a satanic monument next to the Ten Commandments? Really?
I mean, the U.S. Supreme Court has already ruled that the Ten Commandments, that the displays not only have a religious significance, but also a historical one.
Well, you're talking a different type of issue because in Oklahoma, they were ruling by the state constitution, not the federal constitution.
I know,
so it's
but
an entirely different issue. If you're talking Texas, it's a moot point.
It's not that different, but you're right. Texas,
we're talking different constitutions.
I've looked at them both.
State constitution versus federal constitution.
I know.
So
I looked at them both. And then I practiced law for like a decade too, so I did read them and see a lot of similar words. Lucien, thank you. Good luck to you.
And I taught you that there was a separation between that there was a difference between the federal constitution and the state constitution.
Thank you for that. All right, good to see you.
Let the media of the world mock me.
Are we going to be allowing this to happen? And while we're doing it, we'll be having polygamy and polyamory and all the other things that go along with a corrupt culture. Is that the way we're heading? Well, it looks like it is.
There is a statue to Lucifer that has been erected.
This country was not based on Satan. Now, you may be mistaken on that. I mean, you may have your own private belief on that. This country was based on. It does. Listen, they can have it, but I'm sorry to double check.
Time magazine says it's really not that big of a deal. Let me tell you, it is a big deal. God will not be mocked on his own land by his own people who are covenant people. And at the same time, on Monday, they remove his words in Oklahoma in the middle of the night.
and Lucien Greaves. He's the co-founder of an organization called the Satanic Temple. Gentlemen, welcome to you both.
Thanks for having us here.
Let's start I want to start with you, Senator Raper. You sponsored the legislation that allowed for this 10 Commandments on Capitol grounds. Your motivation?
Well, first of all, we have many monuments on the Arkansas State Capitol grounds, but we had no monument specifically that tied us to any of the beginnings of written law. We didn't have anything that really honored the historical foundation of law. And one of the things that I noticed when I went to Washington, D.C. and visited the United States Supreme Court is that when you walk up the front steps of the U.S. Supreme Court, up to the right is an actual what they call a frieze of Moses and the 10 Commandments. You walk inside the U.S. Supreme Court chamber up to the doors that lead to the interior where the justices meet, and you have on the lower left and the lower right of those doors an emblem there, a sign that indicates the 10 Commandments. You walk in and open the door and look above the head of the Supreme Court Justice at the United States Supreme Court. You also see Moses with the 10 Commandments. When they shut the doors, when they're in session, behind those doors on the back is a rendering of the 10 Commandments. In fact, there are over 50 different places engraved in the United States Supreme Court where you see the 10 Commandments. It's very obvious that in our nation's founding, the jurisprudence in America, Western jurisprudence or American jurisprudence, has many links to the 10 Commandments in terms of a written code of law. And so you'll find the 10 Commandments not only there, Drew, you'll find Moses over the head looking on to the face of the United States Speaker of the House of Representatives. When you go to view the original Declaration of Independence, you walk over the 10 Commandments in the floor of the National Archives, and there's innumerable places where you can go. And so we wanted to honor the historical foundation of law. 99 state legislators out of 135 voted for the bill. The governor signed the bill, and we're now in a position to get that the 10 Commandments monument on display.
Let's hear from Mr. Greaves. You have countered asking for permission to put your own monument at the Capitol. The statue is called Baphomet. Your reasoning behind that?
Well, if Senator Raper had looked deeper at the Supreme Court, he would see that Moses was only one of 18 other lawgivers, and there's homage paid to several different lawmakers, including Confucius and many others. And the 10 Commandments have no special placement in the Supreme Court, nor are the 10 Commandments as they are listed on Raper's monument listed in the Supreme Court. There's tablets, there's Moses holding them, there's Roman numerals indicating 1 through 10. And these, like I said, are all part of other legal aspects of judicial history. And to that end, we feel that the only way that a 10 Commandments monument can stand is if it indicates that kind of plurality. And in Raper's own legislation that allows for the 10 Commandments monument to stand, it says that it commemorates but one of many sources that influenced the development of modern law. And our monument, as we stated on our application to the Arkansas Secretary of State's office, commemorates the judicial trial and error that helped us to realize the need for a rational secular legal system, standards such as the accuser's burden of proof, the presumption of innocence, and a respect for material evidence. These modern legal standards, we argue, have roots in corrective measures against moral panics and witch hunts, and they're all part of a way of our finding to subdue brute mob intolerance.
What does that have to do?
In contrast, sorry?
What does that have to do with your statue of Baphomet, though?
That's what our monument stands for. That's the meaning behind it. The meaning in the binary elements of the Baphomet, the part that it's part animal and part human, it indicates a reconciliation of opposites, and that's why we want it to sit next to the 10 Commandments. It can show that people can have perhaps diametrically oppositional points of view, but that they can live harmoniously. And it reasserts that we live in an inclusive plurality that respects religious freedom. And in that way, it commemorates Arkansas law, the Constitution's Declaration of Rights, Article 2, Section 24, which states in part,
Let me get back to Senator Raper here. I think you made your point here. He doesn't seem to be arguing that the constitutionality of the 10 Commandments monument, like I've heard before, and I wonder, you're your response to the fact that, I mean, Florida, other states have been forced to allow other religious monuments when they had Ten Commandments
that's actually incorrect. Cinnamon versus Pleasant Grove in 2009 specifically states no entity can force the placement of a monument on public grounds. This has actually already been litigated. The fact is that what he's trying to refer to is try to act as if Arkansas does not have other monuments that signify and honor other things. We actually have multiple monuments on the Arkansas State Capitol grounds. In fact, we have a monument with the Angel of Mercy on top of that monument. In the state seal of the state of Arkansas, we also have the Angel of Mercy in that state seal. And inside of our chambers, we have In God We Trust. The fact of the matter is, this gentleman's application is frivolous. They're doing this all over the country. He actually is not a Satanist. He's an atheist. So in terms of what he's doing is totally off base. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to finish.
One at a time, gentlemen.
It wasn't written by you. It was plagiarized from Oklahoma. And you're trying to make a facile political point that we're a Christian nation. And if you look at McCreary County...
Let me interrupt you. We're running out of time here. I wanted to have you guys both ask each other a question. So, Mr. Greaves, I told you I'd let you ask the senator a question. Go ahead.
Okay, it's a yes or no question, so only yes or no will suffice. You seem confident that your monument deserves special placement, in that you are not wasting the taxpayer money when it's sure to come down, which it will, because there is really no case law that supports you, despite Van Orden and those types of things. Those were different because that monument had a 40-year history.
Ask your question. We're running out of time.
Okay. Yes or no, will you pay the litigation fees if the state of Arkansas loses? Will you personally reimburse the state?
Respond and ask your question.
Well, the bottom line is that, again, this is a situation where a person is attacking the integrity of 99 legislators in the state of Arkansas that passed Act 1231. And the fact of the matter is, if somebody sues on a frivolous nature, that's their decision. But there is no waste standing up for a law for the state of Arkansas. We have multiple monuments on the state capitol grounds. The application that they have submitted actually is meant only to interrupt. The monument is only meant to interrupt. Their application is to interrupt what the state of Arkansas is wanting to do. I got a picture yesterday, Drew, from the state capitol grounds of Colorado. Has the exact monument on that state capitol ground, as well as Missouri.
Did you have a quick question you wanted to ask him?
You know, I really don't have a lot of questions. I mean, this gentleman actually was introduced today with a fake name, with a pseudonym. That is not his real name. So if I was going to ask a question, I would like to know why it is that this gentleman goes around this nation bringing up frivolous things under an assumed name. Why don't you use your real name, sir?
We don't have much time, but quick response.
Because from people like you, Senator Rapert, good Christians, I get death threats all the time. That's why.
Feelings mutual, but I'm still not afraid to use my own name.
Pull out a gun when people ask them questions in a parking lot.
Okay.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for being on. I have a feeling this is an issue we're going to continue to debate, as next month this is going to be before a board that oversees the grounds, and we'll hear some more. But gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on. Coming up after a quick break, Arkansas voters will get a chance to decide this fall whether to legalize medical marijuana.